My name is Jim Whitehead. I'm a CPA in Salt Lake City. I have been in practice for some 30 years now. I have been through many different industries in my career. I've been CFO of a real estate company, of a development company. I've been in the retail sector. I've been in the startup industry, involved with patents and intangibles. And I have had a tax practice over all these years to some degree. Lately, I acquired a CPA practice and am now in that full time at this point in my life. I came across Doug and the misfortune concept about 12 years ago. I was an avid reader. I always have been. I have always been open to any number of ideas. And I read the book partway. I don't know if I dare admit to that. I guess I have to be open here. You know, CPAs aren't supposed to show their warts here. And I put it on my bookshelf. 3.5 years ago, as I was resorting through a new phase of my life, acquiring the CPA firm, I went through all my things and, you know, kind of cleaned up, figured out where I was going to go, set my new goals, and went after it. And I came across the misfortune book. And it was an odd thing because one morning I was in the paper, I saw one of Doug's little ads that he has put in there, I'll suspect for 15 years perhaps. And I read that thing and I go, I've got that book. What's going on here? I actually read it and I determined to come down to one of the seminars. I actually came to one of Doug's retreats. And I sat down through it, and I could have cursed myself for the years that I lost with the gem in front of me of putting a lot of concepts in place that if I had read just a few more pages or it had been in front of me in a different time frame, I had a golden opportunity. I created a few buckets, and so I actually have put into practice, finally, you know, right before I turned 60, I finally put into practice as a professional person these goals that, if I had done it, maybe even a decade or even earlier, and funded them accordingly, I could be enjoying these benefits to a much higher degree than if I had waited. With the ability to do investment grade or maximum funded life insurance strategies, you have an opportunity to go down at the bottom of the risk pyramid. When I don't mean bottom, but I mean the lower part where it's safe, where you're not going to lose. And say just at the time you're ready to retire, like many of my clients, a 2008 comes around. And they didn't have all their eggs in one basket, but let me tell you, all the portfolio strategies, whether it was growth, income, international, large cap, small cap, across the board, those suffered in the recession. And people lost upwards, depending on how risky it was, 40 easily to 60% of their whole nest egg. If they were ready to retire at that point in time, they were devastated. They had to reallocate and really seriously assess if they could retire, or if they were retired, how much they could take. You overlay that with some money perhaps setting in some 401ks and some RMDs, money could disappear much more quickly than people want. In the 401k setting, it's tax deferred, but unfortunately in our retirement years, the tax man comes knocking at the door, and those rates of 10 and 15%, frankly, are up to, for most of my clients, easily 25%. And you overlay RMDs that maybe people don't need, they don't have the flexibility that they want. But going back to the person who lost 40% of their nest egg, in 2008-9, what ends up happening is they may not have enough to take them through the rest of their life or that of their spouse. That is devastating. There's no time to make that up once you're retired. You don't go back into the marketplace. And the maximum funded life insurance strategies allow us to build that money up, not lose principal, because at every step of the way they are not invested in the stock market. That is important for people to understand. The money looks to an index that will be out there, but it does not participate directly, and so principal is not lost. Right now we're in a tax environment where a lot of uncertainty reigns. The problem with uncertainty is we fail to act, and when we fail to act, we fail to plan, we actually plan to fail. We do not know if a current administration is going to tamper with the principles that we have lived with now for decades. We go back into the 50s, we go to Tefra, Dameron, and so forth, and when we're all done with these rules, we have put some strictures on the concept, but the concept has remained viable, robust, and very flexible. And so when you look at those rules, our past administration, current administration, keeps testing the waters if these things are going to be changed. They're last bastions of an ability to grow tax-free in most instances, tax-deferred in others, but if they're should I say, engineered or structured or built properly, these buckets can be very powerful in letting us be in control of our money. They don't hit our tax return. Let me give you a few examples of real clients that I have, that I deal with. And I deal with them from A to Z in terms of income resources and large and small resources. If you take a person who has mid-range income, they're now retired, they like to replace the income as mostly as they can. Okay, say we're at 60 to 70% of pre-retirement, maybe a little bit less. At some point in time, Social Security enters the equation on the front of the tax return. If you have a 401k, you're age 70 and a half, or even earlier if you've had to take money out of your 401k, that money then shows up on page 1 of your 1040. In the middle of the return on page 1 shows up your Social Security as a tentative figure. Is it that 15,000? Is that 20,000? Is there one spouse or are both spouses? And let's just say it's 15,000. That's a fairly non-typical amount. Okay, so 15, maybe 30 shows up as a tentative amount for Social Security. Maybe there's that 401k amount of 10 to 20 or 30,000. All of a sudden, most of that Social Security is going to be taxed. Okay, because of the other figures on the front page of the return determines how much Social Security will be taxed. I can say mostly 80% of my clients have 85% of their Social Security routinely taxed. Now, we can politically go back and forth and banter this through, but the fact of the matter is it's taxable income. Now, juxtapose that, say, with the maximum funded life insurance strategy where you have some buildup. And maybe you've decided that it's going to fulfill a retirement goal for you, and you want to take some of that money. Structured properly and done right, that money will not even hit the tax return. That is powerful. When we look at all the variety of investment potentials that we have out there, whether we go to the stock market, or whether we look at blue chips, whether we look at large caps, small caps in the stock sector, maybe we want to look at tax-free bonds. Perhaps we want to invest in real estate. Maybe we had some talent in our early years and we invested in a company. We have somebody we know that we're willing to invest. Whatever these investments are, they all have differing abilities to deliver on these concepts that we know as liquidity, safety, rate of return. And then of course we zero in on what does that do to me in a tax sense, because I've got to factor that in. When you look at all these four things, whether it's liquidity, safety, rate of return, or taxing the seed or taxing the harvest, this tax-favored harvest, when you look at all these concepts, what ends up happening is the maximum funded life insurance strategy excels. The risks and exposure, especially as we get older in years, and this applies to the younger group as well, nothing performs on all four fronts, particularly the tax-favored one, like maximum funded life insurance can. It's an amazing thing. You can take any one of those things. If you want to take stocks, the volatility is there. If you want to take real estate, you have the illiquid side of things. And when you compare the maximum funded life insurance strategy across all of these and put them up against each other, you have a viable alternative that is frankly overlooked in today's retirement planning alternatives.